It was in the spring of 1962 that there was a very popular song on the radio, made popular by the famous actor, well, famous then, Walter Brennan. And it was called Old Rivers. It was about a farmer named Old Rivers and his mule. And Walter Brennan ended his song by saying, "I can see that mule, Old Rivers, and me." I guess maybe he could see himself walking along behind that mule and the farmer. Now, it doesn't take very much imagination on my part right now, as I look down this beach, to see a little white boat with red trim coming this way. And in that boat was my dad, Norman Roy, and me. And we came to shore right here, right where I'm standing. And the reason I know it's right here is because just behind me where I'm looking now, there's a surveyor's stake. There was a flag tied to a tree right by that stake, and we headed directly in to that flag. And that was the beginning of what is now known as Camp Carmel at Dory Lake. Now, I'd like to give you a bit of a perspective as to where we are. You'll recognize this. This is what we call home. And if we zoom in, we zoom down onto Canada, and then Saskatchewan, and then Dory Lake, and then Michelle Point, and the Michelle Point Beach, where this video was taken. And the X marks the spot where the camera was. Up here is Michelle Lodge, and the camera was aimed this way. Now, Michelle Lodge is where the Blue Goose was born. The Blue Goose was a boat, and it originally was sort of green. It got painted blue, but then the blue kind of got washed off, and what was left of it is green again. Now, you're probably wondering, why is an old fishing boat so important to me? Well, back in 1962, I had a lot to do with that boat. I was only about 15 years old, and everything was new and exciting back then. And about 25 years ago, I by accident came across its remains. I made a mental note of where it was, and this summer I went back to where it was, and I was able to find it. Took a little while, but eventually found it.
Did you find it?
I think so. Now, I'm sure glad that my brother was with me on this trip, because he was able to tramp in there and pull those little pieces out for me. I'd probably still be stuck in there if I tried to do it myself.
This one's pretty sound, a little punky down here, but there's a lot of wood in here that is still pretty good. You get your cactus juice into that, and you can definitely get pens out of this.
Now, you remember this is where the camera was sitting for that beautiful beach scene. Well, this is where the Blue Goose was, about 200 yards in off the beach. Now, I'm just thinking here, maybe instead of turning this into a pen, I should make it into a cane. I am back in Winnipeg, a long way from Dory Lake, about 600 miles away. And as you can see, I'm in the middle of the Pizza Cutter and More series. Now, it appears to me that the Blue Goose was painted 4 times. I can see 3 different shades of green here, and 1 coat of blue. And the blue was the last one, but it's almost all come off. It must have been water-based paint. Yepers, even though I'm going to cut that end off, I don't want any loose nails real close to that spinning blade. If the blade catches it, it could come flying out at me at probably 100 miles an hour. You know, someday I'm going to figure out just how fast is the circumference of that blade turning. Now, the Blue Goose was not a new boat when Camp Carmel got it. It was probably maybe 4 years old, and Michelle Lodge was in the process of replacing all their lumber-constructed boats with plywood construction. Same size, same shape and everything, but made of plywood. So, I'm wondering, I'm a sentimentalist, I guess, who was it who pounded those nails in. Was it somebody I knew? Most likely it was. You know how I always say I show my mistakes? Well, other than the fact that my fingers are too close to the blade there, can you spot the other mistake that I'm almost going to make? Yep, I forgot to adjust my miter fence after I was using it on my bandsaw. I've already got one little nick in that fence. Don't want another. There's no use having these pieces any longer than they absolutely have to be. So where the rib was and it's all rotten, may as well cut that out too. Now I have to admit I am really surprised at the good condition on the inside of that board. I thought it was going to be all punky and full of wormholes and, well, as you can see, it's in pretty good shape. You may recall hearing my brother say that I was going to use the cactus juice, and I'm going to do the cactus juice process again. A lot of you know what I'm talking about here. And in order for that to work well, the wood has to be perfectly dry. So I'm going to take advantage of this bright, warm day and dry it outside in the sun here. Now I can't tell you just how badly I want to continue on with this pen. I'm really anxious to see how this wood is going to work. However, I do have to finish the pizza cutter series, so I better do that first. So until then, we'll just have to put the pen from the Blue Goose on hold. So please watch for part 2. Probably in a couple of weeks. We'll see how it goes.